Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sisters of the Strange. I'm Shay.
I'm Landry. Do you have anything exciting other than you just don't feel good this week?
No, I am playing the role of a sick Victorian child this week, so you guys are going to have to just bear with me.
I took a picture this summer when we went on our trip, and it was Aaron laying in a pool floaty.
Oh,
and then I put it up next to that Victorian lady that's like this, because that's what he looked like.
He did. He was living his best life, though. You know?
Zonked on a pool float, just chilling. It was hilarious, though.
I'm not as sick as I was last time I recorded when we were sick.
You had the measles.
When we were on the other side, when we saw that was the day that we saw the cabinet close.
Ooh.
That was scary. But yeah, I'm able to actually speak today.
Yeah. You don't have a hoodie on and your nose isn't all red. You're doing better.
I am. I'm doing a lot better this time.
It wasn't measles. What is it? Because it was out of the SpongeBob. The mumps? What were
suds.
The suds. I'm like, it was something with SpongeBob we were making fun of.
The suds. Yeah, it was rough. But I'm okay. I'm just got to get through this. We've been pushing it off this weekend because I've been like, I'm not feeling super great.
It's also just been weird here. The weather is we're going to be cold. We're going to be hot. We're going to blow from the north. We're going to blow from the south. We're going to blow from the west. So just everything here is just nasty anyways.
Yeah, it is.
Gross.
And I've worked up in triage every day last week at work. And that's just
asking for it.
Asking for all the germs.
That's the other day. When you were like, I'm sick and Aaron was sick. And I was like, why am I not sick? I'm the most sickly person there is. And I was like, oh, I sit at home. I don't do anything.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to get you sick. And then I was like, well, Aaron's already sick. So whatever.
Yeah. I think gaining weight has helped me not. That sounds weird. But whenever I used to be super skinny in college and stuff like that, I was sick all the time. But as I've gained weight, I don't really knock on something. I haven't really been getting sick lately.
That's good. I don't want you to get sick.
It's been 2 or 3 years since I was super sick. So this week, I'm going to be talking about the story. It is from a Mineral Wells police officer. It's a Reddit thread that is 10 years old. I read it when it came out, probably 10 to 9 years ago. I read it a long time ago. And it's creepy and it's fun and very interesting. And it goes really deep into the history of Mineral Wells. Enough so that whenever I was going through it, I was like, should I not call it Mineral Wells? Should I call it, should I allude to it being just crazy water town? What should I say? Because I'm scared that the city or someone from the city is gonna say something about it or come after the pod for it. So
it's what they're known for though. Everybody knows Mineral Wells is creepy. And
yeah, this one just dives really deep into history and stuff like that. And so that's where it's So grain of salt there. And also there's some names in here and I did not fact check any of these names. I will say that right now. I almost changed some of the names. But one of the names is important to the rest of the story, the way that it flows together is important. And so I didn't change any of the names from the original writer. I changed from his point of view to third person point of view. And I'm not reading his direct stories. I kind of preface his stories so that it's not a copywriting plagiarism issue or anything like that. So I did my best to give you this story without giving you his exact story. But also in that, I'm going to say that it is a well-known creepypasta, Reddit, no sleep, community story type thing. It's a fictional horror story originally written by another author, and we're just retelling it in our own words for entertainment.
Entertainment purposes
Entertainment. Only. Nothing here in this episode is our own theory, personal experience, or claim about real people or real events.
God forbid.
Yeah, I'm I've got to put that out there. I don't want anybody coming for us or me or the podcast or anything like that. But also last time I shared, because we did a Mineral Wells story pretty early on, and I shared a little bit of this guy's information or viewpoints, and someone took one of our reels, put it in the Mineral Wells Facebook group, and it blew up. But I got called ignorant and all sorts of things for sharing. And someone in the clips was like, she literally says his theory. And they were calling me all sorts of names.
Not my theory. Anyway, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, they were calling me names and stuff. So I don't want to relive that.
That was the first time we went viral before we went viral.
Viral again, yeah. So I want to be able to LOLs. I want to be able to share this story without someone coming for me. So don't come for me. Okay? Thank you. So let's just get into it because this story is fun. It's interesting. It's spooky. And if you're anywhere near Mineral Wells or if you've ever really been through there, then you'll understand just like the fun of this story as I go through it, because I was able to be like, oh my gosh, I've been in that place, or most of these places I have been in or been around. Yeah. And so it's excited. Like, it's really cool to dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So I want you all to imagine a small Texas town about 50 miles west of Fort Worth, a place that looks quiet, ordinary, and friendly on the surface. That's what Mineral Wells is. About 16,000 people live here. That is from 2010. That is not the same population as now.
Yeah.
And most of them are kind folks who will wave at you from their front porches. But if you stay there long enough, you start to notice something else beneath the polite, small town exterior. There is something unspoken, like everyone knows a secret and they're not supposed to talk about it. After dark, that feeling gets stronger. Mineral Wells essentially shuts down after 7 p.m., the streets empty out, and the lights in the storefronts go dark. And although you might expect a small town to feel cozy at night, Mineral Wells feels the opposite, like the entire place exhales and something old wakes up. Which is very true.
Very true.
Those roads get so dark at night, and it does feel so eerie driving anywhere in that vicinity, probably anywhere in Palo Pinto County at night just feels like it feels that way. So I completely understand when they said that. I was like, you're not wrong.
Yep.
And it's such like I wouldn't say it's like a bar town because it's not, but a lot of people who go hang out in Mineral Wells like have drinks at like a couple of the places. So cops are like crawling. They are waiting for you.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's at least nice. You know, there's a cop at like every turn.
Mm-hmm.
So the officer who told this story that I am sharing with you today, he was there for almost 5 years. And in that time, he had seen and heard enough strange things that he could not write them off for his imagination. And he said if he hadn't had a bizarre paranormal experience as a kid, he probably would have thought he was absolutely losing it with everything he experienced in Mineral Wells. But before he could understand the things he was experiencing, he had to understand the town's roots. So about 6 months after moving there, he visited the local historical society and dug into how this place was born. So I do have a previous Mineral Wells episode, like I've mentioned, but Mineral Wells was founded in 1881 by a man named James Lynch. When he dug the first drinking well, he and his wife swore the odd-tasting mineral started to cure their ailments. They both had like rheumatism and arthritis, and there's a whole story behind that. Like I said, go listen to the other episode. And in the late 1800s, anything that claimed medicinal power spread like wildfire. And soon people were arriving from all over the country to drink what was quickly labeled miracle water. More wells were dug, and then the third well was dug. And that third well became its own legend when a woman suffering from dementia supposedly regained her clarity after drinking from it, which I mentioned that one. It was, they started calling it the crazy well because it was this old lady, the kids at school would see her trekking back and forth there every day, and they slowly saw her start to get better and better and better and better. And so by the early 1900s, Mineral Wells was a booming health resort. Hotels, bathhouses, spas, and bottling companies sprang up everywhere. People traveled hundreds of miles believing the water would heal them, but a lot of these visitors were already sick or elderly, and many of them never actually left the town alive. So today, Mineral Wells is quieter, part tourism, part retirement community, but the past lives thick in the air. That is one thing I want to note right away, because I had never really considered why Mineral Wells was so haunted, or feels so haunted. I just was like, well, just because like the history of the baker, like it just kind of feels dark. And then I was thinking about it when I was doing this, and I was like, that's right. Like, think of all the people who came with like leukemia or like tuberculosis that was going on.
All the people
that
traveled there,
yes,
that were sick or dying
and never left because like the water can only heal so much.
Yeah, it's not literal miracle water.
Yeah, and I never really thought about that part of it. I just thought about the people who really just came and like cured their rheumatism and cured their arthritis and cured their little stomach ulcers and stuff like that. Like, I never actually thought about the amount of people that died at probably like a train station or however they got here.
Yeah,
and just
that's true. Very true.
Yeah. So that opened my eyes quite a bit. I was like, oh.
Well, and the town itself, the town itself looks dead.
Yes.
You know, like it, not anymore.
They're revitalizing it.
It's a way more happening than it used to be whenever we were younger, when we were visiting, driving through there.
Yeah.
Literal ghost town.
Up until probably the last, I would say 5 or 10 years, it started to kind of get itself revitalized because the baker is getting brought back. But Yeah, I remember it just was like, you felt like you were driving through like
boarded up, little
ghost,
shops on
like the ghost towns out of like California movie scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Some
an old Western movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
tumbleweed flowing by with boarded up windows on an old building where the wood is like so dead that it's like gray now. The park was like peeling paint and nobody was ever out there. Like chain link fit, just looked like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
A literal dead town.
Yeah. Now it's actually really cool, and that's probably where I'll move whenever I buy a house.
It's so cute.
It's actually a lot better, but it was, and that only added to the lore when we were kids. You were like, we're in the haunted town.
Yeah.
And you'd see the baker from so far away, and you'd be like, oh, we're approaching.
We're getting closer.
Yeah. Okay, so this officer had his first experience after he'd been on night shift for only a few weeks as part of the Mineral Wells Police Department force situation. A frantic 911 call came in reporting a dead body at 200 Hubbard Street, which is the Baker Hotel. It was 12:30 a.m. when he and his partner arrived and found a body. It was a woman lying broken on the red brick steps leading up to the main entrance. Her back was twisted unnaturally, her head was crushed, and she wasn't wearing any clothes. The scene was brutal, but the cause was obvious. She had clearly fallen from a great height. He looked up. There were no balconies, but there were plenty of windows, old, unsafe, and many of them open, which literally up until the last probably 3 years, every single window of that hotel was busted out and open. So, yeah. And there's no safeguards. Like, you straight up just, if you want to drop out that window, you just drop right on out that window.
Just step right on out. There ain't nothing going to catch you.
Nothing's going on. So the victim was identified as a 29-year-old woman who was a lifelong resident and had managed a local cafe. Her friends told investigators that earlier that night, the group had been hanging out on the hotel's 7th floor after the bars had closed. They hadn't noticed her slip away until they found her clothes neatly folded in one of the rooms beside an open window. They mentioned 2 strange things. One, she had been heard saying she needed to go meet Virginia. No one knew who that was. And 2, there were rumors that were unconfirmed that she had been involved with her boss at the cafe. But nothing explained why she undressed, why she went to the window, or why she fell out. The case was labeled a suicide, odd and tragic, but closed. So months went by and the call faded into memory until one night at the Historical Society, the officer stumbled onto a line in an old manuscript that made his blood run cold. It described a legend about a woman named Virginia Brown, a resident at the Baker Hotel, rumored to be the mistress of the hotel's owner. Heartbroken and drunk, she supposedly threw herself from the 13th floor, and for decades afterward, guests claimed to see a woman roaming the halls late at night, sometimes in a red dress, sometimes nude, and always covered in blood. He wanted to dismiss it, he really did, but then he checked another archive document of the hotel's old ledger, and there it was, Virginia Brown, room 714, the exact same floor the woman had been on when she disappeared from her friends, the exact same room number where her clothes were found. And that moment was when the officer realized that something profoundly wrong was going on in Mineral Wells. Something old, something connected, something still very much alive in the places people had forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Which we have heard that story 1,000 times. She is also the one who is supposed to have the room that smells like lavender perfume. And you can hear her heels walking. And it was said that she took up room 714, 716, and 712 or something like that. Like she had a series of rooms.
Yeah, she's a popular one.
Yeah, and I shared her legend and lore. And that's the story. I had shared that before.
Yes.
And I think I had missed a little bit of the details or messed up a little bit of the details in the very first episode about Mineral Wells when I told that story, because I didn't go back and read this. It was just
based
from
on memory
from the last 9 years, which I do not have a good memory. So no surprise there. But about 4 months after the incident at the Baker Hotel, the officer had another run-in with the strangeness of Mineral Wells. He and his partner were working a swap day shift when they were dispatched to a disturbance at the Veterans of Foreign Wars building on Southeast 6th Avenue. So the VFW on Southeast 6th Avenue. When they pulled up, there was a crowd gathered outside who were all shaken and pale. Before the officers even stepped through the doorway, they heard why. A sound so raw and distorted it made their skin crawl, and it came from within the building. They went in with their weapons drawn, clearing the foyer and nearby rooms as quickly as possible. Everyone had made it out safely, but the atmosphere inside felt wrong. The air was unnaturally cold and damp, which was not usual for a Texas summer. The noises weren't just coming from the back office, though. They seemed to seep out of the walls. There was a faint whispering that could also be heard, which made the hair on the officer's arms rise. They approached the office door, and it was locked. They announced themselves, but got no response. His partner reared back and kicked the door so hard the whole frame splintered and the door opened. For just a blink of time, the officer thought he saw a figure standing in the corner of the room wearing a long white doctor's coat and an old-style surgical mask, but the image vanished as fast as it came. Inside the room, they found an older man in green military fatigues with his hair sticking out wildly like static had grabbed a hold of it. He clutched a large, dull letter opener and muttered through panicked breaths. Not the water. Not again. It's cold. So cold. Time for your treatment. I'll be good. I won't run. Before they could talk him down, he lifted the letter opener, slammed his free hand onto the desk, and drove the letter opener through the back of his own hand.
Ah.
He slammed it so hard it buried into the wood beneath his hand. The one thing he said before collapsing was, "He's coming." While the officer's partner ran out to get paramedics, he cleared the rest of the office. On the floor beside the desk was a half-empty box of bottled water. It was crazy water, the exact water that was bottled right there in Mineral Wells. Something about it felt significant, so he slipped one of the bottles into his pocket without even thinking about it. Once the paramedics arrived, attributing the man's behavior to possible dementia, the officer stepped outside and noticed a brass plaque mounted near the entrance. Milling Sanitarium, National Register of Historic Places, Mineral Wells, Texas, 1929. The building had once been a sanitarium. And suddenly that cold, damp air didn't feel like a broken AC unit anymore. That night, sitting alone in his apartment, he couldn't shake the image of the man, that fleeting vision of the doctor, and the ice-cold crazy water sitting on his counter. He didn't believe in possession. He wasn't sure he believed in ghosts either, but something at the VA building had felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. Two bizarre events in a short period of time, both pointing towards something older, deeper, maybe even dangerous woven into the history of Mineral Wells. He briefly considered transferring, but something pulled him in the opposite direction. If something dark was lurking beneath the surface of that town, he intended to uncover it. So he started where anyone would, with someone who'd lived in Mineral Wells his whole life. His partner, Officer James, had been on the force 15 years and had been born and raised right there in town. So, the next night on patrol, the officer decided to bring it up again. "Crazy old man," James whispered. "Almost got himself shot." But the officer pressed. "Didn't anything feel off to you?" James shrugged. "Cold in that office, yeah, but this is Mineral Wells. Weird stuff happens. Must just be the crazy water." "You drink that stuff?" the officer asked. James smirked. "Everyone here does. You get used to the taste." And then he shared something personal. His great-grandmother had been brought to Mineral Wells in the 1920s because the crazy water was supposed to cure her schizophrenia. Whether it worked or not, no one knew. She died in the town after giving birth to his grandmother. James saw an old photograph of her standing in front of one of the wells. Then he shared a story he had hardly told anyone. Years earlier, he responded to a call from an elderly woman named Ellie. She had taken too many of her own pills and claimed a young lady had told her to swallow the entire bottle. When James asked who this young lady was, Ellie answered calmly, "The woman who watches me from the window." James checked the bedroom, and for one split second, he thought he saw a face staring in through the window. Then it disappeared. But there was no one in the house and no signs of forced entry, only a faint smell he couldn't identify. But the face he had seen, he swore, to this day, that it was the same face in the old family photograph, the face of his great-grandmother standing by the crazy water well.
Ew.
So I'm thinking his great-grandmother is the crazy water
the lady
dementia
story.
Yeah.
Lore.
That's where that seems to be tying back to, in my opinion. So after James opened up about seeing what he believed was his great-grandmother's face, things between him and the officer went quiet. They didn't really talk about the paranormal for a while. James was seemingly in this place where he wanted to believe something was going on, but couldn't quite let himself cross that line. It was like there was a thin curtain over his eyes. He caught glimpses, but never the full picture. The officer, on the other hand, was done trying to rationalize any of it away. Between the woman at the baker, the old man at the VA, and James' story about Ellie, he was all in. Whatever was happening in Mineral Wells was real, and he was determined to understand it. About a year after the VA incident, he got his next encounter. James was out with the flu, so the officer was riding solo when a call came in about a vagrant at the Old Norwood Hospital. Which, do you know which one that is?
Mm-hmm.
So the Old Norwood Hospital, I've talked about it, but I'm just going to say, one, I've been in that building. Terrifying, and pretty much every single picture I have in that building has an orb in the picture.
Yeah.
So I will post those. And in one of the pictures, you can zoom in and it says 1943 in it. And it said you can see where it says patient asleep. I think it's supposed to be bowel movement. It says BM, little blood. So a little bit of blood in their bowel movement or something like that. But it says 1943 on it. There's other ones that say 1953, but it doesn't say 19. It just says the 43 and the 53.
Yeah.
So scary, crazy, coolest place to experience.
It is crazy.
And other thing about that place is the very front of it, there's a really deep, dark lore about this place, but the very front of it has crosses, but they are all upside down crosses, built into the actual structure.
Yeah.
And there's a whole theory on if it's upside down crosses because there's some sort of upside down cross that actually used to do something with religion, in a good way. or if it's a bad way. But those are my two things about that building, just right away.
Interesting.
So this building has been abandoned for years, and they'd gotten repeated reports that someone was living on the 3rd floor, banging around and making noise at all hours. Up to that point, the department had mostly turned a blind eye for reasons never fully explained to him. But that night, the orders were clear. Go out there, find whoever it is, and get them out. He pulled up a little after 10 p.m. and parked across the street. The Norwood was a hulking old structure built in the early 1900s when Dr. Norwood and his wife moved to town. It had once been a private hospital, and the officer vaguely remembered something about the doctor having ties to T.B. Baker, but the details escaped him in the moment. So pause right there as well. It is said that there was a doctor who lived, and I could be saying a little bit of this wrong. It is a memory thing as well. But the Baker started needing a doctor. And so then there was a doctor that was like right across the street from the Baker Hotel, where there's that whole strip center where like all of those little buildings are. But then it was also said that the Norwood Hospital started, and so Baker would send people to him too. And so he lived on like the 2nd and 3rd floor, or the top floor, and then patients were worked on in the 1st floor, and then the 2nd floor I think is at some point when it got converted, and I think he just kept converting to where he just moved up and up and up and like kept living above it, because the 1st floor when I went in still had like
medical stuff,
like a surgical bed and like like where you could see where he had his medicines and stuff like that. And then the 2nd floor had looked like it could have been patient rooms, but at some point in time it also could have been like just bedrooms for home. But then the 3rd floor was like an attic that was just like one big open space. So I don't know exactly what it was, but yeah. As he looked up, he saw it. There was a faint flickering light in the 3rd floor window. It looked like a candlelight. So whoever they had been hearing banging around and making all the noises up there, it seemed like they were home. The front door was boarded, but a window on the left side of the entrance had been busted out and carefully cleared of glass. He drew his flashlight, climbed through, and stepped inside. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from an old, abandoned hospital in a rough part of town. Peeled paint, rotting wood, scattered clothes, empty food wrappers, beer cans, and the sour smell of too many nights spent with no ventilation. There were signs someone had been staying there, but nothing on the 1st floor. He found a door that clearly went down to the basement and decided that problem was for future him, but not tonight.
Amen.
Yeah. The 2nd floor was more of the same. Decay, debris, empty rooms. But there was one space that stood out, a room that looked like it had once been a nursery or a children's play area. Dusty stuffed animals slumped in a corner, a rocking horse frozen mid-motion, bunk beds sagging with age. When he reached the stairs to the 3rd floor, he heard movement above him. Something or someone was definitely moving around in the dark. He really didn't want to go up there, but orders were orders. "It's the police," he called up. "If you're up there, I need you to come down." Silence. After a minute, he started climbing the stairs slowly, flashlight cutting through the thick dark. At the top, he swept the beam across the room and caught a shape huddled in the corner, a man buried under a heap of blankets covering his face. He smelled him before he even got to him. Under the layers of sweat and filth, there was something sour and chemical, the scent of addiction. Up close, the man looked like he might be in his 50s, but the officer had a feeling his real age was probably much younger. His hands were twisted, his face sunken, and when he mumbled, the officer saw his teeth, black, broken, and crumbling. "Mariana, is that you?" The man muttered. "Are you here to take me now?" The officer kept his voice firm. "Sir, I need to see your hands. What are you doing up here?" The man spoke louder this time, but not clearer. "The children," he said. "They won't leave me alone. Poor kids, they're missing pieces, always playing, never quiet. They went to see the doctor. The water didn't help. They always tell me, I never sleep. Are you here to take me?" The officer knew there hadn't been any living children in this building for decades. Whatever this man was dealing with, it wasn't kids running around the halls. He stood the man up, patted him down. There was $2 in one pocket and a charred piece of foil in the other. When he checked the man's fingers, they were burned at the tips, just more confirmation of long-term use. As they walked him back down the stairs, something caught the officer's eye on the 2nd floor wall at the base of the staircase. A word smeared in something dark, dried, and ugly. Mariana. Victor saw it too and began quietly sobbing. The officer didn't push it, they just got out. Driving away toward the station, he replayed everything in his mind and remembered the light he'd seen in the 3rd floor window when they first arrived. But when he was up there and searched the 3rd floor, there hadn't been a single candle, no lamp, no flashlight, nothing that could have made that flicker. He checked the rearview mirror for one last look at the hospital as it shrank in the distance. Sure enough, in the upper window, a tiny wavering glow blinked back at him, like a candle flame. So like there was still a light on up there, even though he was like, there wasn't one when I was up there. I was going to show you it's 8 different pictures. And one of the pictures, I'll put them on the screen for those of you who watch us. I'll like put a little compilation of them on the screen, but then I'll also have them on our social medias. It's like the one my hand is on or near. And one of those is the one that says 43. There's a picture of my mom. And if you look at her pant leg, it has an orb on it, like at the bottom near her ankle. There's orbs all over. And I really don't think it was dust because you're not really, I don't know, it could be dust. But to me, I was like, that's orbs.
Yeah, for sure. This is so weird.
Yeah. I think all the records at one point in time, there's a few, like we'll get back to where some of the records are held at this place, but I think some of the records at some point in time might have been kept up in that closet that we were in, and then just people spewing them around and stuff like that. But I think it's crazy that ones that are almost 100 years old, 80 years old are still just sitting on the ground.
Yeah. And like the freaking handwriting is like so pristine.
Yeah, the script. I was really, really, really trying to read the nurse and the doctor names on those, and I couldn't. Which you'll understand why here in a minute, but I really wanted to find out what the nurse and doctor's names were, but I couldn't read any of them.
Oh yeah, I can't see that.
No, I would love to go back, and I wish I had paid attention to it whenever I was there the first time. Because I would love to have.
Monday something 29, 1953.
Yeah, I did see that. It's like Monday, June.
Oh yeah, maybe June
or something like that.
Asleep. Vitamin K tabs.
And one of them was only like 19. I think it's like 19-year-old male or something like that. I was reading them. I was zooming in on reading them too.
Interesting. I could look at those forever.
Oh, I know. I want to have access. Like it makes me want to go back into the building, like just to get more of the records, just to look at more of them. So I'll post those. Y'all can see them because they're really cool. Look, it says bedside notes at the top.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it says.
It says Norwood Hospital.
Does it?
At the top.
I don't know if it says Norwood Hospital on top. Oh yeah, it says Norwood Hospital, Mineral Wells, Texas, bedside notes. Continue on. So a few days later, that night at Norwood pushed him from unsettled into I need real answers. And that's where Mary Scott came in. Mary had a reputation in Mineral Wells, not as some wild-eyed conspiracy theorist, but as someone who quietly knew more about the town's history and hauntings than anyone else. She taught school in the 70s and 80s and now lived on a little piece of land on the south side of town. James had actually set up the introduction, which is his officer, like his partner. So Mary had been James's kindergarten teacher and later his middle school teacher. The officer drove out there one afternoon in just plain clothes. If he was going to start openly asking questions about ghosts, cursed water, and old hospitals, he didn't exactly want to roll up in full uniform. Yeah. Bright idea. Mary's place was small but inviting. It was a brick house tucked off the road, shaded by big old oaks. A small pond shimmered nearby with a worn dock, and her dogs drifted in and out. He knocked, and a woman in her 60s opened the door with short hair that was just beginning to gray. Her eyes were sharp and kind. She invited him in, and they made small talk about James, his job, and his move to Mineral Wells. When they settled into the living room with glasses of iced tea, she got straight to the point. "What can I help you with, dear?" she asked. He hesitated, then decided to stop dancing around it. "Miss Scott, Mary, I'm just going to say this straight," he told her. "Since I've been in Mineral Wells, I've run into things I can't explain. People who seem off. Things only I can see, and I know how that sounds. I just don't know who else to talk to about it." Her expression didn't change. "Go on," she said. He told her about the Vaker, the Vaker. What is up with me and B's and V's? The Vival. The Bible. However, I said that the other day. But he told her about the Baker, the VA, Ellie, Victor, the children, the water, all of it. When he finally stopped, she asked him one simple question. "Do you drink the mineral water? The crazy water?" He shook his head. "No. I've got a bottle at my apartment, but it's still sealed." "Good," she replied without missing a beat. "Leave it that way." She explained that most of what she knew came from years of digging through old deeds, contracts, journals, anything she could really get her hands on, and from stories passed down through local families. When she said something that made his stomach drop. "You're right that something is wrong here. I call this place Mineral Hells. And it all started when Old Man Lynch pulled that mineral water up from the ground. From everything I've pieced together, he wasn't some kindly pioneer. He was cruel, selfish, and maybe worse." She went on. "The water does have high lithium levels, but I don't think that's the heart of it. I think whatever came up with that water did something to this town. I think it keeps the dead tethered here, and I think it makes the living blind. Numb to what walks beside them. The people who have been raised on it their entire lives, They can't see the same things you and I see, and some of them are more open to being pushed, nudged, even taken over by whatever's on the other side. In an instant, several pieces snapped together in his mind. The young woman at the baker, born and raised in Mineral Wells. Ellie, elderly, likely a lifelong resident. The man at the VA, and probably Victor too. All of them immersed in that water for decades. And James, born here, raised here, drinking it his whole life, unable to truly accept what he'd seen. What's wrong with it? The officer asked quietly. What's in the water? Mary sighed. I don't know exactly, but I think Lynch tapped into something he didn't understand, and whatever it was, it hasn't let go. The wells, the baths, the tubs in those old hospitals, the water was the doorway, and after that, the dead stopped leaving. He leaned forward. Do you know anything about Dr. Norwood? He asked. I think he's connected somehow. Mary frowned in thought. Not much, just whispers. His name and another one that kept coming up. Marianne, or no. She snapped her fingers softly. Mariana. That was it. The name hit him like a punch. He thought of the words smeared on the wall at the Norwood, the vagrant calling out to her in the dark. Yeah, he said, Mariana. Mary nodded. She was Norwood's head nurse for years. Officially, he was an osteopath. Unofficially, people suspected there were other things going on inside that hospital, things no one talked about openly. I've heard rumors, long ago, that some of those records were hidden somewhere in that building. But I've never been inside, and I certainly don't know where they'd be now. She kept talking, but the officer's mind drifted away to one particular image, the basement door at the Norwood. If the records were still there, that's where they would be. He wrapped up the visit, thanked Mary for trusting him, and promised to share anything else he uncovered. So that night, he was back at the Norwood Hospital, and he parked his squad car across the street once more. He was on duty, so if anyone questioned why he was there, he had an easy answer. Follow up on patrol, vagrancy check, whatever excuse he needed to use. He popped the trunk and pulled out a black satchel. Inside the building, the familiar stench and decay greeted him. He moved past the boarded entrance, through the same rooms as before, but this time he wasn't headed to the third floor. He was going down. He clicked on his flashlight and stood at the top of the stairs. He started down, counting each step. 10 total, just in case the light went out and he had to climb back up by memory or in a dead sprint. He'd already measured that it was about 22 steps from the entryway to the top of the basement stairs. If something went wrong, at least he'd have those numbers in his head. At the bottom, his boots met bare soil. His flashlight revealed old equipment, broken furniture, and general debris. No filing cabinets, no papers, no neat little boxes of secrets. He cursed under his breath but kept moving forward. The second room somehow felt darker than the first. An overturned cabinet lay on its side with shattered glass vials scattered around it. He stepped around them carefully, expecting another doorway at the far wall, but there wasn't one. Just an old coal stove sitting in front of a brick wall. The bricks were piled on either side, like someone had been doing some hasty repairs. He knew he hadn't reached the front of the building yet since he hadn't taken those full 22 steps yet, so something wasn't adding up. He doubled back to make sure he didn't miss anything, no doors or anything like that. He returned to the room with the stove and took a closer look. The back wall was all brick, and there was a long crack running up from behind the stove toward the ceiling. He shined his flashlight down near the floor and noticed something else. At the base, the bricks didn't look like they'd been properly mortared at all. Pulling some of the loose bricks, and with a lot of effort slid the iron stove just enough to expose the base of the wall. It confirmed his suspicion. Years of water damage had eroded the soil behind the bricks, causing them to crack, and the wall had been thrown up quickly and poorly. With a few well-placed kicks near the bottom, he created a small opening. He got down on his hands and knees and squeezed through. On the other side, he stood, brushed the dust off his clothes, and froze. There, lined up neatly against the walls, were rows of old wooden filing cabinets. Dark wood, heavy and solid, each with a little brass label on the front. They looked almost untouched by time. Mary had been right. The records were still there. He moved quickly along the row, scanning the labels until one word stopped him cold. Experimental. He slid the drawer open. He shoved as many files as he could into the satchel, slammed the drawer, and turned to leave. And that's when he saw them. In the middle of the room stood a small group of children. Not moving, not talking, just standing there. Their eyes blinked almost in unison, their mouths curled into cheerful, too wide smiles. And then it was like a record skipped. Their faces changed. The girl in front now had 2 hollows where her eyes should be. The boy beside her lifted a hand to wave, a hand that only had 2 fingers and a thumb. Another child lay on the floor, dragging himself forward with his arms and the stump of his legs trailing uselessly behind him. The others had their own missing pieces. Then the record skipped again, and just like that, they were whole, all smiles, all bright eyes, and all wrong. He ran, through the hidden room, back under the crumbling wall, across the dirt floor, past the coal stove, through the basement, up the 10 steps, 22 paces to the entry, and out of that building as fast as his legs could carry him. As he ran, he heard their voices behind him, not screaming, not chasing, but sing-song, like a playground rhyme. 1 for the tongue and 2 for the nose, 3 for the eyes and 4 for the toes. Ring the bell, she's drawing near. Ding dong, Mariana's here. That nursery rhyme would follow him long after he left the Norwood.
Ew.
Yeah, that's the building I was in.
Yeah, I want to find the crawl space. I want to see the crawl space.
I do too. But that
see if
place,
it's really there.
I went dead ass middle of the day, and me and Mom were using flash to take those pictures because all the windows are boarded up.
Yeah.
And I actually think that they're trying to maybe renovate it again. It looks like some of the windows and stuff are like new, but like we just had to pay to go in because they were using it for like project graduation.
Mm-hmm.
It was safe enough for us to go in. We had to pay like $25 each and went in. But it was dark.
Yeah, I could tell. I was watching the live like when there was no flash. It was like you couldn't see anything.
No,
completely dark.
Just walking around up in there. We're the only ones up there too.
Oh my God.
Just went for it. If I had remembered this story and then gone in there, yeah, I would not have gone in there probably. But screw that. So back at his apartment, the officer sat alone at his small dining table. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that little girl in the basement of the Norwood, the empty hollows where her eyes should have been. On the table in front of him sat the black satchel from the night before. He reached in and pulled out folders that he had taken from the experimental cabinet. He had taken 5 of them. He reached for the first folder and couldn't bring himself to open it. He just stared at them for a long time, and eventually he slid them back into his satchel, closed the flap, and walked away. The next morning, the folders were still there, and he still didn't open them. Almost a week went by before he finally worked up the nerve to open the satchel again. He pulled the first file out. It belonged to a 7-year-old boy from South Carolina. The name listed was just a nickname, Charlie. The stated reason for admission was leukemia. He flipped through the pages until one heading caught his eye, surgical notes. Replantation of severed limb of minor child. The notes described an attempt to reattach a severed hand, and the language was clinical and cold. Preparation of the stump included shortening of both bones by 1 centimeter, and it has radius and ulna written in there. Repair of the radial artery, ulnar nerve, and median nerve was attempted, along with 2 veins. He skimmed ahead to the outcome, surgical outcome, failure to reattach hand. Underneath, in woman's slanted flowing script, someone had scribbled, mother sent to MS. A chill ran through him. How did a child admitted for leukemia end up with a severed hand, and what did MS stand for? A person? A place? He flipped back to the preparation notes, looking for more context, and found the line that made his stomach hurt. Clinician's third attempt at attaching a child's severed appendage. Subject, Charlie, mildly sedated with heroin, hydrochloride, and given local anesthetic at right wrist, fully conscious. M, assisted with cleaver, severing the hand cleanly. Mother watched from observation room. He put the file down and just sat there. Mariana, M, with the cleaver, and a mother forced to watch. He scanned through the rest of the folders, different children, different injuries, same pattern, gruesome replantation attempts on kids who'd originally been admitted for something totally different. It became horribly clear. Mariana was cutting children apart, and Dr. Norwood was trying to put them back together. The girl with no eyes, the boy with missing fingers, the dragging legs, the nursery rhyme, and it all fit together. What he didn't understand was how they were getting away with it. How parents were going along with this horror show. He doubted any mother or father in their right mind stood by voluntarily while their child was mutilated. Whatever the rest of the truth was, it wasn't in those 5 files, and he shoved them away in disgust. The weeks after that, depression really dug deep into him. He still had to put on his uniform, respond to calls, write reports, usual small-town stuff, fender benders, petty theft, noise complaints, and he'd almost convinced himself that if he just kept going with his head down, he might slide back into being just a normal cop again. But Minter Wells was not interested in letting him forget. He heard about a little boy from a well-known family in town, a tragic accident with a riding lawnmower. The blade had chewed up his arm all the way to the elbow, and it had to be amputated. Then there was a city council president, a respected church member, golden boy of Mineral Wells. One night, he took a .45 from under his mattress, pointed it at his wife sleeping, and shot her once in the temple. He called the police himself. He confessed that it must have been him, his gun, his house, no intruder, but he said he didn't remember pulling the trigger, and it only got worse from here. One evening, the officer was dispatched to a smell complaint at the college campus in Mineral Wells, which is a Weatherford College campus, I guess. It's out on the old Army base.
Oh, okay.
Fort Walter is out on Fort Walters, which I had to I literally Googled that and found where it was, walked through, and it does say how
long has that been there though?
But I don't know if it's actually Weatherford College campus, or if it's another one, but it did say college campus class of whatever 25 or something. There's a sign. Because I did look it up. I was like, I've never heard of that.
Interesting.
Yeah. A lot of these places I fact checked.
Yeah.
At least the buildings where they were.
Yeah.
And they are all accurate. So a student hadn't been seen for several days, and something foul was seeping out from under his dorm room door. The campus sat on the grounds of Old Fort Walters, a World War II training installation. The officer had read about it in the archives. At one point, it was the largest infantry replacement training center in the country. He'd also come across an old account of a soldier who'd taken his own life in the barracks rather than face deployment. So security led him to the room. The smell was unmistakable. It was decomposition. And they didn't want to open the door without a cop there, like the security guards didn't. So the guard unlocked it. The officer pushed it open. And in the center of the room, hanging from the ceiling fan by a bedsheet, was this missing student. His face was bloated, bruised, and purple. His eyes were bulged, red, and glassy. A girl walked by, saw this scene, screamed, and had to be escorted away. And the officer looked for signs of struggle, overturned furniture, broken items, handwritten notes, anything. Everything else in the room was very neat, though. So he called in the investigative unit and turned the scene over to them. And a few days later, he heard what they had found. Under the desk was a single folded piece of paper. The investigators had expected a suicide note, but the message didn't match the student's life or situation at all. They thought it was all just nonsense, but it rang a bell for the officer. The note read, "I cannot go to war. I am sorry, mother." So he's like, so did the ghost take over this kid's body? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Weeks later, at the officer's usual coffee shop, he noticed a man staring at him. The man was a few tables away and staring just a little bit too long. When the officer glanced over, the man would jerk his eyes away, pretending to look at something else. The officer clocked him automatically, though. Late 50s or early 60s, dark hair, wearing a work uniform with his name on it. His hands were beat up, stained, gnarled, and rough from manual labor, not the usual guy at a coffee shop. When the officer got up to leave, he felt the man's eyes on his back. Over the next couple of weeks, he kept seeing the same man in multiple different places, always close enough to keep an eye on him, but never close enough to accidentally bump into him. By then, the officer was pretty sure he was being followed, but the guy didn't seem threatening, just watchful. One morning, he woke to a scrap of paper tucked into the frame of his front door. It was on the back of a receipt from a local garage, with 4 words hastily written on it: coffee shop, 3 p.m. He wasn't thrilled that this stranger knew where he lived, but realistically, anyone with a car and patience could follow him. So he went to the coffee shop, and the man was there sitting in his usual spot. When the officer walked in, the man stood up and walked towards the hallway leading to the back, near the employee exit. The officer followed him through the door. "Want to tell me why you've been following me, Stan?" the officer asked, using the name stitched on his uniform. "I just had to be sure," he said. "Mary told me you two talked. I wanted to see for myself that you were, well, one of us. Mary Scott." So he was one of the others that she had hinted at, the ones who didn't drink the water and could see what everyone else was ignoring in this town. And what exactly did you figure out by watching me not drink the water? Stan shrugged. "For starters, you only drink regular bottled water. No coffee, no tap, and I checked your trash. No crazy water bottles anywhere." Because like the officer would go to this coffee shop and just get like a bottle of water. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't actually drink the water from, or like, yeah, the coffee, because they would have the water from the town.
Yeah.
"So why am I here?" the officer asked. Stan crushed his cigarette under his boot. "Mary said you know what's going on in Mineral Wells. Said you might be trying to do something about it. And before you ask, I don't drink it either. Never have. My father made sure of that." "Who was your father?" the officer asked. "He worked as an orderly at Milling Sanitarium," Stan said. "I'm familiar," the officer replied. Stan nodded. "I thought you should hear what he told me. Millings was the worst place he had ever worked. He helped with patients, meds, cleaning rooms, so he saw more than most. He said the treatments they did there were nightmares: electroshock, experimental surgeries, psychological games, sleep deprivation, even waterboarding, and that the screams were constant. Despite the horror, Stan said, the place never ran out of patients. People always kept coming." "Did he know where they all came from?" the officer asked. He put it together over time. Word spread that Mineral Wells had miracle water. For folks with physical problems, they had bathhouses and spas. But Millings went after minds. Every nervous condition, every hysteria, every mental weakness, they promised to fix it all. So families came, and most of them never left. Business was good. There were quiet deals between Millings and other businesses in town. The baker would send certain guests their way, and Dr. Norwood sent patients too. The ones my dad remembered most were the ones who seemed pretty normal when they checked in, healthy even. The officer changed the subject. "So how do you know Mary?" he asked. "What's her role in all of this?" Stan opened his mouth like he was going to answer, then shut it again. "That's her story to tell," he said firmly. So he just said that basically Dr. Norwood would send people to Milling Sanitarium, and the Baker Hotel would send people to Milling Sanitarium, which is where the VFW was.
Yeah.
Where he thought he had seen a glimpse of a doctor in a coat in the very beginning.
Yeah.
So it's all tying.
It's all coming together.
All these pieces are sprinkling in together.
Yeah.
The next day, during a thunderstorm, the officer pulled the Norwood files back out. Stan's phrase stuck in his mind. He flipped to Charlie's file again and stared at the handwritten note. It clicked. MS wasn't a person, it was a place, and it was Millings Sanitarium. Norwood wasn't just butchering children. He was sending their parents, often perfectly healthy adults, to Millings to be broken in their own way. He checked the other files. His second hunch also came right. None of the children were local. They came from South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, Rhode Island, Tennessee, all over. They were outsiders, and he finally saw the full shape of it. Imagine this. It's the early 1900s, no phones, no TV, no social media, news travels slowly, mostly by letter or word of mouth. Your child is dying, and you're dying, or you're dying. Doctors close to home have given up. There's one last rumor that you could follow. A place in Texas where the water heals everything. You're desperate, you'd try anything. So you pack up your life and you head to Mineral Wells. There, the web is already in place. You've got doctors like Norwood waiting to treat your child. You've got institutions like Millings waiting to help anyone with a mental strain. You've got a famous hotel feeding them referrals. And once you're inside, who's going to come looking for you? Who's going to believe if you somehow get out, drugged and traumatized, ranting about experiments and spirits? The kids were carved up in the name of research, and the parents were funneled to Millings. Every angle covered, every loose end tied. All fueled by a bottle of mineral water and the desperate hope of people who just want a chance to live. Which is an insane puzzle.
Literally so insane.
A wild web.
Everybody was working together.
It seems like it, yeah.
Oh my God.
So after everything he'd learned about Norwood, Mariana, and Millings, the officer hit a wall. He spent 3 days in bed. On the fourth day, something in him snapped back just enough. He got dressed, put his gear on, climbed into his car, and drove. He had a mandatory community event to attend, a historical presentation about Mineral Wells, moved to the Weatherford Public Library because Mineral Wells Library's roof was under repair. It was supposed to be a feel-good Mineral Wells Day program. Proud history, heroic founders, one little well became a bustling resort town. He sat in the back, half listening as they praised James Lynch as the town's savior. When the presentation ended, he stepped outside to thank one of the speakers on behalf of the police department. But before he could get to her, he saw someone else was already talking to her. Mary Scott, of course. When she finished, their eyes met. She walked over, taking his appearance in one sharp glance. "You look like hell, my dear," she said plainly. "Southern women just don't waste their time." "Nice to see you too," he joked weakly. Then he dropped the smile. "Mary, I found the files in the basement. Norwood and his nurses were experimenting on kids, and the parents, they were being sent to Millings to be dealt with." Mary studied his face. "I know," she said quietly. The words hit him like a gut punch. So he'd crawled under that wall, stared those broken children in the face, risked his sanity for something she'd already known? He felt anger flare up. Then he saw something in her expression that made it falter. She glanced around, then motioned for him to follow her around the side of the building. "Only part of me wanted you to find them," she said once they were out of earshot. "The other part, well, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you everything, and there are consequences for talking too openly about Mineral Wells, from both the living and the dead. Remember when I told you I don't drink the water anymore? Well, I did, for many years, and that makes me exposed." She rolled up her sleeve and had 2 long, thin cuts running up her forearm. They were from wrist to nearly her elbow, healing, but they were still obviously there. "They were shallow enough not to kill me," she said, "deep enough to leave scars. I did it to myself 2 days after we talked. I don't remember doing it. I think it was a warning." "From who?" he asked, guilt and panic fighting inside of him. She hesitated the same way Stan had. Then she asked, "Did the files mention Norwood's nurse's name?" "Mariana?" he said. Mary nodded. "She was my grandmother." His world tilted. In an instant, it made sense why she had known where to send him, why she had been so careful, and why she was so afraid. "She came to Mineral Wells in 1910, Mary continued. "Her family brought her for treatment. My mother said she heard voices. She was only 24. I think Norwood saw a chance to use her. She had my mother 6 years later." He tried to stop her. "Mary, you don't have to. This is dangerous. You're already." "I do," she cut in. "This has stayed buried long enough." Her voice shook, but she pressed on. "As a kid, you think your parents are flawless. Then you get older and start seeing what you weren't meant to see. My mother was missing several fingers on both hands. I found out later that they had operated on her when she was a child. She had other scars, older ones." He stared at her. "Her own mother did that to her?" "Yes," Mary said with tears welling in her eyes. "That's how I know the same thing could happen to me. The night I woke up with these," she touched the scars on her arm. "I dreamt of my grandmother. I heard a bell ringing like in the old days at Norwood. It meant it was time for one of the children to go with Mariana, but this time it was my turn." She broke down, shoulders shaking, and he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. Mary wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. Why my mother named me after her, I'll never understand, she said. Maybe she didn't either. She started to turn away, then seemed to remember something. There's one more thing. I tried to tell you last time. You need to see someone, a woman named Teresa, Madame Teresa. She's here in Weatherford. She does psychic readings for tourists, but that's just the surface. She's an old soul. She might be able to help you. All right, he said. I'll go. I hope she can take you further, Mary replied. I've given you everything I can, and he believed her. So that's why I said I couldn't change the names, because she was Mary after Mariana.
Yeah.
And that's where I was like, I can't, she's the main character, and I can't change from Mary Scott to Craig.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do that. That doesn't work for Mariana. You know? Craigiana. Tatiana. Bust down, Tatiana.
Bust down, Tatiana. Let me see you bust down.
Yeah. Okay, so he does go find Madame Teresa, and it is in Weatherford, which I think is crazy. I didn't look that up. I didn't look up if that's ever been a thing here. Or
Well, I know there used to be a palm reader on Fort Worth Highway for years.
Did it have a crystal ball and hands glowing? Because he said there was a crystal ball, hands glowing sign outside.
Yes.
So he went there, and he basically asked her, like, why the water or whatever, all these things. And she said the water was twisted, and the ones who came there to be saved and died there instead stayed. Their spirits were bound to the place. They seek vengeance on those who carry the bloodlines and legacies of the ones who profited from their suffering.
Okay.
But she told him there's a dark cloud hanging on him and that he must move carefully. And like by the end of it, he actually believed everything she was saying. And she said, there's one more thing. I hesitate because you are fragile right now, but I must say it. You have a friend who is in great danger.
Mary.
He did not wait to hear the rest, and he was already out the door. He drove like a madman possessed. 15 minutes later, he was racing down the familiar driveway to Mary Scott's house. The sky was streaked purple and red, the last light of the sun sinking away. He noticed something immediately. No dogs, and the yard was still. I do that all the time. He didn't bother with stealth. Lights flashing, siren blaring, he pulled up and jumped out, leaving the noise screaming behind him. He drew his gun out of pure training, knowing full well that bullets weren't going to help against whatever he was afraid of finding, but his body clung to its routines. The front door was unlocked. He pushed it open and stepped inside. The first thing he registered was the sound, a wet, ugly squelch under his boots. He looked down. The carpet was soaked, not damp, but submerged. A pool of blood spread across the living room floor, deep enough that he couldn't step around it. He was just having to stand in it. Every protocol he had ever learned flew out the window. He didn't photograph, didn't freeze, didn't secure the scene. He just moved forward into the kitchen. It was worse there. Blood covered the floor completely. He made his way around the kitchen island, and that's where he found Mary. She was slumped against the lower cabinets, her clothes soaked and her body mutilated. Her face barely looked human, like someone had tried to turn it into a special effects mask. Her nose had been neatly removed. 2 empty bloody sockets stared where her eyes should have been. The truth finally crashed in. He had dragged her into all of this. He had asked questions. He had pushed, and Mary had paid the price. His legs gave out, dropping him into the gore-slick floor. He landed hard, hands slipping on something cold and slick. He looked down, and his fingers were wrapped around the handle of a large kitchen cleaver. They found him exactly where he had fallen. Neighbors had finally gotten tired of the squad car sitting outside of Mary's place with the siren still screaming and called it in. When officers arrived, James was amongst them. He stepped into the house, took one look at the blood-soaked floor, the scattered parts, and let out a low whistle. Jesus Christ, man, he said, staring around in disbelief. It's a slaughterhouse in here. What happened? The officer could barely stand, barely think. It was too late, he whispered as James pulled him to his feet. I tried to stop it. Who did this? James asked. It was, he started, but there weren't words for what he'd seen, and nothing he could say would make sense anyway. James scanned him quickly. Is any of this your blood? Are you hurt? No, he said, I'm fine. But he wasn't. He wasn't even close to fine. Within minutes, the house filled with people in uniform. They roped off their property, took photos, collected what was left. Mineral Wells didn't have the sort of CSI circus you see on TV. No laser grids, no armies of techs, just a small team of investigators who did a lot with very little. But even they had never seen anything like this. His clothes, boots, duty belt, everything he was wearing went into a clear evidence bag. They photographed him from every angle, swabbed him for trace blood, logged every detail. Any other civilian would have been cuffed and tossed in a cruiser on the spot, but he was one of their own, and they let him go home to shower first. He cleaned up and put on fresh clothes with his black satchel slung over his shoulder and reported to the precinct. They did not take him to a regular office, but to one of the small interview rooms they used for suspects. He was offered coffee, but he refused. Someone fiddled with the old camcorder in the corner, deleting old footage to make room. When the red light flicked on, he expected to give a simple witness statement, but instead they read him his Miranda rights. He chose to talk anyway. No lawyer, no delay. In his state, it felt easier to just tell the truth and let it land where it would. Later, he realized that was his first mistake. He told them everything. He talked about the woman at the baker, the man at the VA, Ellie and the face at the window, Victor in the Norwood, children in the basement, Millings, Mariana, Mary, Teresa. He told them about the files and slid them across the table as proof. He begged them to stop drinking the crazy water, to look deeper into what was happening in their own town instead of writing things off as weird and moving on. He even tried to tell them they needed to shut the bottling company down and that this cursed water was being shipped across the country. They nodded along just enough to keep him talking, but the looks they gave each other when he explained that Mary had mutilated herself were not kind. It went about how you'd imagined. Why were you at her house that night? A psychic told me she was in danger. Sure, officer. Then tell us again about the ghosts. When he was done, they thanked him for his statement and put him on temporary leave. Then they escorted him to a holding cell. The next weeks blurred into each other. He was formally arrested not long after the interview and held without bond. The case against him looked terrible. He'd been found alone at the scene, soaked in her blood. His hand had been on the cleaver. The medical examiner said Mary couldn't have possibly done that level of damage to herself and stayed alive long enough to do it. It was too extensive and too deliberate. And even if she could, why would she? There was no way that that story was going to fly. His arrest never made the paper, and he wasn't surprised. Local cop dismembers beloved retired teacher is the kind of headline that never dies in a small town. The department wasn't about to invite that kind of wildfire media. A grand jury convened that month. His case was presented quickly. It didn't take long. And they returned a true bill, murder under Texas Penal Code 1902, a charge that can carry up to life. Being indicted for a crime you didn't commit is one kind of horror. Realizing that no one on earth will believe your version of events is another. The files he'd found at Norwood were seized. Even if they truly proved anything, which they didn't, they were now buried in evidence or quietly destroyed. He knew they'd never see daylight again. Even if people like Stan or Teresa tried to speak up, who would listen to them? Most of Mineral Wells lived under this veil. Locked in a small cell, the officer cried, slept, and drifted deeper into this dull gray place where nothing felt real. And this is where he has written his account and he admitted to something. He said, I have to make a confession. This is the only thing I am truly guilty of. I have lied to all of you. After a competency hearing, the court ruled he wasn't mentally fit to stand trial. His attorney, who probably believed he was guilty of this all anyways, presented a timeline of unstable behavior from the early stage of Mineral Wells' calls all the way through Mary's murder. He painted a picture of a stressed-out cop who snapped. The story worked beautifully for everyone involved. Instead of going before a jury, he was quietly routed into a different track of punishment, one reserved for people considered not criminally responsible in the usual sense. He finishes his story off by saying, I am currently confined in a secure mental facility, serving a 40-year commitment for a murder I did not commit.
What?
So the biggest plot twist of all is that he's like, so I started out by saying I'm a Mineral Wells cop, but I'm actually in an insane asylum now. And then he goes on to write about the insane asylum as well. So I will link all of that in the show notes for you.
I need to know, what? Did this woman actually die? I need to know.
I don't know. That's the thing, is I did not look up any of these names.
I have so many questions.
I did not look up like any of the names. I did not look up Stan. I did not look up Mariana. Like, I didn't look any of that up. I know the Dr. Norwood thing is a real name.
Yeah.
And I know the stories of him. Those are a wide rumor. So he could have written this whole story just based off of all the fun rumors and made his own story out of it.
Yeah.
Or
Sure.
it could have actually happened to him and he could actually be in an insane asylum right now. He never says his name, ever. He says who his partner was, but who's to say he didn't? But he also, names. Like, Mary Scott could be an alias as well. Like, he could have already changed the names to put the story out there in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
Ugh. I have so many questions.
But isn't that a fun story about Mineral Wells? He ties all of the places together. The only place he doesn't mention is the Nazareth, which the Nazareth has a very heavy history there as well.
Yes, it does.
But I think that it was owned by like nuns and stuff like that. So I don't think it has a super dark. It might from a different period of time. But it was started by like, I think they were called like the sisters or something, but it was nuns.
Yeah.
So it might not just be tied into everything because it might have actually been a good place. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yikes.
I know it has a doll room in the basement.
Ew.
I do know that. So that's the fun story of the Mineral Wells cop.
That's such a good story. I'm so glad I finally got to hear the full story.
I think I read it weird, but I don't care.
No, I don't think so.
I'm like, I don't care. Y'all can go read it for yourselves because it's way more intense. It's 6 parts.
That's crazy.
And I just narrowed it down to, like, if I actually read it, it takes like 5 hours. Like, actually to read it and go through the whole thing. Like.
Yeah. No, I think you did a great job of telling it. It
I
made sense.
I give you the details to make it connect.
The big pieces.
Yeah.
I liked it.
It's very interesting though, because I can imagine I could put myself in his shoes because I've been to mineral wells so many times that I could put myself in his shoes, and literally I felt like I was in a VR headset, like walking around with him.
Yeah, same.
Which is so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically he said everyone in mineral wells, not necessarily like, I don't think they even tried to cover up what he did. They just didn't understand it.
Yeah. They were like, okay.
Yeah. And who's to say, like, which Mary says that, you know, the ghost of Mariana or the deeper spirits or who did that to her. But who's to say he wasn't actually the one actually really losing it and did it?
Right. I was going to say that. Maybe he just doesn't remember.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But after that, I did look up, like, because before I started doing the research on this, I was looking at doing like Appalachia and some stuff from that. But I was like, that's a way big blanket to cover. So I'm not doing that yet. And one of the episodes, though, that I started to watch talked about how Appalachia has the same energetic fields naturally that someone created. He created a god helmet, which is, I will definitely go over that in way more extensive detail, but a guy created a god helmet and it would mess with the frequencies. And the Appalachian Mountains have that same frequency as that. And those frequencies are like how you talked about in your frequency energy episode that make you see spirits and things like that. And so I was looking up, is mineral wells on any ley lines? Is it on any energetic, geomagnetic, you know, fields or anything like that? And it basically said that, so it says, mineral well sits on top of a major geological transition zone. Specifically, it rests on the edge of the Palo Pinto Uplift, the Fort Worth Basin, the old fault lines, and then the limestone, sandstone, and layers of groundwater, and then their mineral heavy aquifers. So that all is a like electromagnetic signature situation, which can cause the effects of dizziness, heaviness, static-like sensations, and spiritual pressure. And then high mineral content equals electrical conductivity. So the crazy water is rich in lithium, magnesium, calcium, sodium, bicarbonates, sulfates, and that can conduct electricity far better than just like typical groundwater. Yeah. And that means that EMF anomalies aren't just paranormal, they can also be geological, but it also will set off your EMF entity situation.
Oh, interesting.
Paranormal investigators love locations like these because the natural conductivity can help amplify spiritual or energetic phenomenon. So
that's good to know.
Yeah. And then it also says that places with healing miracle waters often sit on ancient indigenous sacred ground.
Yeah.
Before white settlers arrived, the exact region was used by the Tonkawa, the Comanche, and the Wichita tribes. And these groups believe that springs were healing, sacred, spiritually active, and a meeting point between physical and spiritual worlds. So mineral wells kind of falls in this really heavy
mixing pot.
Yeah.
Of all kinds of energies.
Yeah, like one of like just natural land energies, two of whenever they brought the people there to try and heal themselves and died. So there's all sorts of different, like there's just like a mixing pot of all the reasons why mineral wells feels that way.
Quite literally.
Yep.
Quite literally. That's insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, I believe it.
Yeah, I definitely think mineral wells, I wouldn't necessarily say that the people in mineral wells are like the reason behind all of this, or that like I wouldn't blame James Lynch for it. And like to me, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say it's more of like land, water.
Yeah, like natural
habits,
reasons.
Yeah, like habits of the people there. But like,
yeah,
I wouldn't say that like the mayor of Mineral Wells is trying to hide anything or anything like that. Like that's not my take on it. I think that was kind of his take. I think his take is that everyone in Mineral Wells is covering up Mineral Wells. And I don't necessarily think that that's... He is in a mental institution. I don't know why that happened. Maybe I need to go to one. But I definitely think that I wouldn't blame the people of Mineral Wells or the mayor or anything like that, or founders. I definitely think that there was... all the doctors back then were experimenting.
Yeah.
That's what all the insane asylums were. That's why they're all so haunted, is there's so much heaviness from experimenting. So that falls in the same timeline as just trying to experiment. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's the connection, the potential connection, whether it is true or not, the connection of parents watching their kids go through this, and then they now go to the mental institution and no one looks for them because they're they came to Texas, and
now nobody's
far
in
away
touch
from
with
North
you.
Carolina, and that's how that happened a lot. Like a lot of our stories is like, well, they left and we couldn't get a hold of them again. So what do you want us to do about it? Like literally the chameleon killer. There was like 3 or 4 people there that left.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do anything about it, and that was like late 1900s, not early 1900s. Yeah. So
they're like, well, sorry.
Yeah.
Don't know.
It was just such a common thing back then.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't keep up with people like you can now.
Yeah. So definitely think it was fun. And if you enjoyed it, let us know. Again, no hate, no nothing like that, because that's not what the goal of this episode was. This goal was for more funsies than it was anything. And if you're a local, then to you, it's fun because you can put yourself in it.
Yeah.
So
it's just a good old fashioned campfire story.
Yeah. Because I couldn't tell you if it's true or not. I can tell you that the basis, the locations, and the history of the locations is probably pretty accurate. I can tell you that, but I can't tell you his state of mind being accurate or the names of the people being accurate or anything like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Other than Dr. Norwood, because it was literally Norwood Hospital. It was actually named after him, and like the baker, that was actually named after him. Still a really cool thing to think about. All of the towns all of it connected.
Yeah, we'll leave that up to your interpretation.
Yeah, do with that what you will. But if you have a story or anything like that, or recommendations, which we've actually had a lot of people messaging us lately, just in this weekend, we had so many people message with recommendations, commenting on some of our episodes, like through email, which is awesome. Like totally keep that up, because I think it's really enjoyable.
Yes.
Send them to sistersofthestrange@gmail.com. You can find any of our social medias, any of our email addresses, anything like that. If you get on one of our social medias, our Facebook or just our Instagram, if you get in those, there's a link tree in there, and you can click on it and it'll take you to all of our social medias. It has a direct link to our email. It has a direct link to the Discord. I've tried to make it as easy as possible for people to navigate. If you can't navigate it, let us know and I will fix it further. But send us an email. Tell us you like us. Tell me I'm pretty and that you love me. And we'll see you in a couple of days.
See you in a couple of days.
Bye.
Bye.